Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21st, 1960 to Joyce Annette and Lionel Dahmer in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From a young age, he showed a really high interest in dead animals. On one occasion, he decapitated the carcass of a dog and he shoved the head on a stake before nailing the rest of the body to a tree. It's pretty messed up. And this behavior reflects the crimes he would commit in the future. When Dahmer hit puberty, he realized he was gay. And in high school, he was perceived as an outcast, likely because he would smuggle alcohol into the school and just drink it during school hours. And after he began drinking in school, his grades began to plummet, cause and effect. Towards the end of his senior year, Dahmer's parents got a divorce, and because of all of their arguing, Dahmer moved out of the house. That August, he enrolled at Ohio State University, but he was pretty lazy because he was abusing alcohol, religiously. He was failing every single class, and he later dropped out after one semester. And in 1979, Dahmer enlisted in the United States Army. He trained as a combat medic and was stationed in West Germany. He was regarded by his superiors as an average or above average soldier. A couple years in the Army, he begins to abuse alcohol again, and this led to his discharge from the Army in 1981. He was sent by his dad and his stepmother to live with his grandmother in Wisconsin. They lived in Ohio. And he found a job in Wisconsin working at the Milwaukee Ambrosia Chocolate Factory, where he would mix the chocolate.
Oompa loompa doompa dee doo. Jeffrey's stirring up some chocolate for you.
When Dahmer was not working, he could be found at gay bars and gay bathhouses.
Oh, didn't see you there. Let me tell you about the crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer. He committed his first crime in Bath Township, Ohio in 1978, with a second committed in 1987, and by 1991 had killed 17 men, with the most sought-after characteristic in his victims of being African American, and doing so by picking up men at gay bars, malls, and bus stops, and ensuring them sex or money as a bribe. At his house, he would offer them alcohol laced with drugs of various sorts to kill them, and then he would have his fun with their bodies. His first murder, a man named Stephen Hicks, a hiker who Dahmer offered beers, and when Hicks made an attempt to leave the home, Dahmer hit him in the head, strangled him, and then began some of his favorite activities to do with the bodies of his victims, including dissecting, dissolving, and beating to a pulp the remains of Hicks, and then putting them in his backyard like seeds to a flowering garden. Most of the time, the things he did with his victims and bodies included sexual acts with corpses before he proceeded to dismember them and then dump the bodies. Throughout his process, he would take photos of the bodies to remember them by and even relive his experiences. And then he would keep various appendages in jars as souvenirs for items for later. The second man he murdered in 1987 was Steve Tuomi, who shared drinks with Dahmer in a hotel room, and whom Dahmer found dead in the room the next morning with no recollection of the previous events. He then used a large suitcase to move the body back to his grandmother's house, where at that time he was living. He then continues to dismember the body and masturbate with it. As time progressed, he developed a more ritual-esque process involving chemical disposal and consuming the flesh of his victims. And then he conducted crude lobotomies to drill holes in their skulls and inject them with acid in order to turn them into what he believed to be sexual zombies. His killing spree finally ended on July 22nd, 1991, when he was arrested.
He would lure bystanders into his house. When they saw that Jeffrey Dahmer was murdering somebody, they'd run out, they'd call the police. The police would come. Jeffrey Dahmer would say, "No, he's just my intoxicated boyfriend. He's just pissed off at me. This is what he does." And so the police officers would fail to run a background check that would show him being a registered sex offender. And after a while, neighbors would continue complaining about noises, continue complaining about different smells coming out of his apartment, but nothing was done. So when Jeffrey Dahmer was finally caught, it was because he lured Tracy Edwards into his home. He brought Tracy Edwards into his home. He lured him into the bedroom at knife point. Tracy Edwards escaped, flagged down a police officer. It was like, this dude's trying to murder me, come help me. So they went into his apartment and they found pictures of dead bodies and dismembered limbs, so they put him under arrest and scheduled to deeply investigate his home to see if there's anything else. And during the time of Jeffrey Dahmer's arrest, he let out this really repulsive screech that made his neighbor throw up. He was under arrest, he's in custody. After police officers went to investigate further, they found many heads in the fridge. They found 3 more around the apartment, multiple pictures of the victims, multiple pictures of the dismembered limbs and dismembered victims, and more human remains in the fridge. 7 skulls in total were found at his apartment, and a human heart was in the freezer. So he was tried on 15 terms of murder during the trial. During this time of his trial, he pleaded insanity. He was found sane and guilty on all 15 counts. He served at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin, and while he was in that correctional institution, while he was in prison, he expressed remorse for all of his actions, all of his murders, and he actually wished death upon himself. This is him on his trial. And he declared himself a born-again Christian. He was attacked twice. The first time was by inmates, and it was just superficial wounds. The second time he was attacked, November 28th, 1994, he was cleaning showers with inmates, and he was, an inmate tried to bludgeon him to death, but guards broke it off. He was sent to the hospital, and on the way to the hospital, he actually died of severe head trauma.
All right, so today I will be discussing the severe alcoholism and cannibalism of Jeffrey Dahmer. On July 22nd of 1991, police discovered Jeffrey's cannibal habit when they searched his apartment in Milwaukee. His apartment was filled with Polaroids of dismembered bodies, potato chips, a jar of mustard, and beer. Coronas. Coincidence? I think not. After looking in the refrigerator, they discovered a severed head. Yummy. He casually bagged a heart he was saving to eat later. Seriously, who keeps leftovers of people? Dahmer admitted to loving the taste of flesh and blood as well. Along with the taste of humans, he highly enjoyed alcohol. He had a full-blown alcohol addiction by the time he was in high school, and he could not control himself. This addiction carried on into his adult life, and clearly he liked to have a beer with his dinner of arm and knees.
So in our group's research, we came to the conclusion that he started out as a disorganized killer, as his first crimes were committed kind of harshly. He was bludgeoning the victims to death, which is kind of like overkill. He wasn't very precise. But as time went on, he developed a very precise method, which involved syringes and injecting stuff into people's brains. And he doesn't necessarily have all of the traits of an organized killer. His crime scenes were very odd in the sense that they were limited to his home, but I guess in a way that was sort of like self-preservation, because it wasn't hidden, but it was hidden from the world. In terms of characterization for what type of killer he was categorized as a hedonistic lust serial killer, which meant that his primary motivation for killing had to do with sexual desire. He would kill because he felt lust for the victims. For him, it didn't matter if the victims were dead or not, for him to gain some sort of sexual gratification from them. And another common aspect of that type of killing is also necrophilia. So he would kill so he could create, in his mind, what would be the perfect lover. The purpose of injecting the brain with the acid or the boiling water was to create some sort of like submissive zombie almost, so he could like commit sexual acts. Him taking apart the bodies was a way for him to gain like sexual release or gratification. And he would eat people that he believed that he truly loved, and sort of in a way that would symbolize the flesh that he would eat would kind of immortalize the victims, which would serve as almost sort of a trophy for him, which is pretty gnarly.